US President Donald Trump is in his opponent's crosshairs once again, this time for allegedly pushing Ukraine to investigate former Vice President Joe Biden, a potential rival to Trump's 2020 presidential bid.
This week, the president has admitted to asking the president of Ukraine to take actions which would benefit him politically. The actions of the Trump presidency revealed the dishonorable fact of the president's betrayal of his oath of office, betrayal of our national security, and betrayal of the integrity of our elections.
Nancy Pelosi and many other Democrats have resisted earlier calls to launch impeachment proceedings against Trump, but this time's different. More than 150 lawmakers are gunning to bring down the commander-in-chief.
With the Speaker's stamp of approval, we're now moving forward with 6 investigative committees being led by the Intel Committee, given the revelations that have taken place as it relates to the whistleblower, and the full resources of each and every one of those 6 committees will be deployed to get to the bottom of what has happened in terms of this lawless administration.
The opposition's apparent conviction is enough to rattle investors. They're dumping stocks across global markets. The impeachment is likely to pass through the House of Representatives, where the Democrats have a majority. The vote then goes to the Senate, where they need the support of at least 67 senators. But there are currently only 45 Democrats in the Senate, and most Republicans are unlikely to support them.
I think House Democrats have got impeachment fever, and the only cure is going to be re-electing the president in the 2020 election.
They want to continue this witch hunt of trying to impeach the president because they don't agree with the results of the 2016 election.
Trump has described the move as presidential harassment and says he'll fight back.
There was no quid pro quo, unlike Biden. There was no nothing. It was a perfect call, a very nice call. And in fact, I thought this was very nice. Ukraine just came out and made a very good statement. It was a very good call. There was no pressure put on them whatsoever.
Although impeachment seems unlikely for now, the rift between Trump and the opposition is growing, and it's not only putting pressure on the president, but global investors as well. Mobin Nasir, TRT World.
For more on this, Ramin Asgard joins us now from Doha. He's Vice President at First Pathway Partners, and he previously served as a US diplomat and advisor to Generals David Petraeus and James Mattis. Welcome to Money Talks, Ramin. Now, after a lot of agonising, House Democrats have now pulled the trigger on impeachment proceedings against Donald Trump. How significant is this move, in your view?
Thank you very much for having me. Of course, this is significant because we're heading into essentially the last year of what is now going to become an election season. And as you know, the U.S. election process is very much drawn out. There had been things before that the Democrats were incensed about, but the timing now is entering into that season. This will be something which if they choose to move it forward, will probably drag through as much of the election season as the people can possibly stomach.
Now, let's look at the central issue that's really triggered these proceedings. Now, Donald Trump has been accused of withholding US military aid to Ukraine as leverage in a bid to smear his political rival, Joe Biden. Do you think there's any merit to that? Do you think Donald Trump has a case to answer here?
Well, I mean, the idea of a quid pro quo for something like military aid in return for some kind of action on behalf of a foreign government, if that's what's charged, that's what's alleged, those connections need to be made and substantiated as far as the relationship between the United States and the Ukraine. It's complicated. It's been a very difficult season for Ukraine, and it looked promising. And if you look at the call and the transcript which just came out, what you're seeing is a congratulations call from one president to another just elected president. There doesn't seem to be any evidence of such a quid pro quo within that call.
Interesting. Now, the impeachment inquiry, as we know, comes at a time when the White House is already grappling with a number of huge geopolitical issues, including the ongoing US-China trade war, which is hurting both economies as well as the global economy. We've got rising tensions with Iran and the Middle East more broadly. How will these impeachment proceedings affect the business of governing, do you think?
I think that's a very, very well-phrased, accurate way to put it, because You know, in President Trump, America at this point has a very personality-driven leadership. It's not a differentiated case of government with several very senior figures in support of the president. Everyone knows where the buck stops, and it's with the president. If the president is distracted or unable to be credible in his statements of policy, where America is going, that will roil markets, and it will be very difficult to send out a clear picture while the president himself is having to deal with these allegations. So it's going to be a challenge. It's one that the last time there was an impeachment issue in the United States over 20 years ago with President Clinton, he did manage to continue to govern and govern fairly effectively through that process. That will be the challenge now in the internet social media age, and we should see quite a bit of fireworks. I just don't know how global markets are going to respond to something that adversarial and that distracting to the business of governing.
Now, what do you think is the likely outcome of this impeachment inquiry? We've seen several instances where nothing really seems to stick to Donald Trump, does it? And we've heard various comments from him that seem that he's really unfazed by what's happening now. Do you think this might be a game changer, or is it simply just going to be another chapter in his presidency?
Right. I mean, you're absolutely right that there have been things that have been done and said before as far as challenging the president and his governance. In this case, it's really going to come down to whether this crosses party lines, whether whatever it is that comes out about this issue is the kind of thing that's going to get Republicans to really step up and take notice. And if so, then that obviously changes the specter of things. But it's very, very difficult to get parties to turn on themselves when they're in the middle of an election process, which is what this impeachment, if it moves forward, will be. So the litmus test will be if the Republicans turn. That turn would have to come during an election season.
Yes.
That is extremely unusual. And so we probably won't see that. We'll have to wait and see, but it's unlikely.
Okay, we've just seen the beginning of a very long process. Ramin Asgard in Doha, thank you so much for your analysis.